Hey, welcome to the 2 Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter at the University of Rochester, in which we take a giant book or two, in this case, that are maybe not giant, but difficult or intimidating, maybe, and break them down bit by bit, section by section, talk about them, analyze them, have a good time, make some jokes. I am Chad from Open Letter Books, and I am joined as always by Brian, author of Joytime Killbox.
I like how many approximations you have. Can you just stand for something?
No,
Maybe, sort of, kind
maybe,
of.
well,
Just
these books aren't long, and I don't know that
plant
James
a
is
plant a
intimidating.
flag, stand on it, and just come on, come on. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I have a question about for you in a second, but and also as always joined by Kaija Stramanis, editor, senior editor at Open Letter Books, translator from the Latvian, whose new translation, River by Laura Vinogradova, is coming out on March 4th. You can pre-order it now. Copies are available, and they are going to be shipping within days if they haven't already. So you can get this book immediately. So get all three of the translator triptychs that she helped put together and curate, the Berlin and Birthday being the two others, and River is the one that you translated. So
Correct.
congratulations on that. This is the first time you're holding those. You haven't seen them.
It is. It is the first time. It's funny because I was catching up on contributor copies and I was like, oh, that's right. I get some too this time. So it has, yeah,
Congratulations. That's
it's
super
really,
exciting.
yeah, thank you. No, it's great. And they look really nice and the designer did a great job. I think it's the first in a long time, maybe, no, maybe since the Subamal Mishra books where we have like true black and white covers.
Yeah,
um, with some photos. So yeah, super exciting.
looks very noir-like. Is it Jenny? What's her last name that designed them?
Jenny with every single V you can think of. It's a beautiful surname, Volvovsky,
Volsky,
if
that's
I'm
right.
not pronouncing it right. Yes, Jenny Volvovsky is the designer. Runs all. I think hers is or theirs. I'm honestly also LLC is the name of the
Oh,
company.
okay. Great,
For
great,
anyone who's
great book
interested.
designer. If anyone's looking for a book designer,
Yes, shout out to
really
Jenny.
catching covers. There's also on my desk in front of you on the right is one copy of the galley that we put together with all three books in one that a special 49 people throughout the country received.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
that has like all three of them and an introduction from Kaya about these three books. Also, if you're not seeing this, you should be watching us on YouTube where you can, subscribe to our channel and give us some thumbs up or whatever you do there. But I do want to say on that galley, the special galley that costs $1 billion to print and to put together and sent to 49 people. One of those people was the ingrate and despicable human being Nick Buzansky, who fucking tore it apart into three sections because he won't read a book that's over 180 pages. So
Nick.
I told him already, and he's happy about it. He is no longer receiving galleys. He is on the list. And I also said, I'm surprised that you would even have that book in your store, given how it's not written by a shitty Brooklyn author. So shots at Books Are Magic, first thing. No,
I'm
really
also
shots at you,
finding
Buzansky. Your store's fine, but you can get bent.
there's also one massive error in the
Oh,
galley, and
sorry.
that's that all the stories start on the verso side and not the recto side.
I knew that. I
But
thought it was a space thing.
um, but whatever. But Nick, that breaks my heart because I took the time to put this together for people like you, for ingrates like you.
If you're listening to this or watching it, go to Books Are Magic, pick up a Delkey book, click on Amazon or an Open Letter book. Click on Open Letter's website or Amazon and order it right in front of him from our website, and then put it back on their shelf. That's the way
That's
that you get
mean.
revenge in this world, man.
That's so mean. I love it.
Either that, I'm going to sign
Take
an
that as
executive order, and your
wrong.
store doesn't get books anymore.
I do one better than Nick. I don't even rip books apart because I just don't buy a book that's if it's more than 199 pages, I'm not going to buy it because the author clearly doesn't know what they're doing if they can't make it shorter than 200 pages. I mean, does any more need to be said? Like, there's not a single book that's good that's over 199 pages. Like, none. There's not
Literally,
one that
literally
exists.
undercutting the entirety of this podcast. If you happen to see this on time, which I don't think you will, one other note is that tonight, which is Wednesday, February 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern, is the Republic of Consciousness celebration for the long list, which includes Rodrigo Frazan's Melville. So good tie-in to the podcast. Also, all of his books longer than 200 pages. Clearly
Also,
not worth
yeah,
it.
they all need to be torn in half
All need to be
easily.
torn in half.
Yep.
Just ripped apart. So Brian, you're back. You were gone for the weekend and you got stranded, huh?
Yeah, I was stuck in Miami for a boat show, apparently. It was really busy there. No, it's a strange time to travel right now. Kind of like I feel like Huck and James, just making my way down the river with a bunch of racists. Also known as Florida.
You never know if a riverboat paddle's gonna get you on the head or not.
No, there was like we got delayed because there weren't enough air traffic controllers. We got delayed because
Huh.
I missed a flight because they only had one person working the entire security line for Miami Airport, apparently. It was amazing. Everything was oversold. One of Trump's children was on one of our flights. It was a weird, like
The one he
literally,
doesn't like.
the one that he really doesn't like. You can guess. It starts with a T, apparently. Um, so yeah, it's really weird. It was a strange week, but I'm glad that I'm alive. I made it, and I'm here.
I
So
wrote this out today, but like truly, like I believe that your flights were clearly delayed due to meddlesome governmental officials. They got doged. Your flights got doged essentially.
I'm 100% positive. I think it was like a DEI thing that just ruined
Just
everything.
ruins everything. But if you wanted to
Yeah.
take over the country and break the souls of the inhabitants, make travel way harder.
Oh
Like
yeah.
there's
Yeah.
like it's like not a great plan if you want to be a dictator to make it so that like something that was already fairly unpleasant is nearly impossible to even like muster up the mental strength for. Like I'm thinking like I'm supposed to go to India next month. I'm like I don't want to deal with any of this. And like if I were just to like go fly somewhere, I don't want to go there either right now. Like I don't trust it,
Yeah, I'm
and
just
it's
gonna
going to
try
be
to
a
get
real
on a
pain in the
no-fly
ass.
list, so I don't have to worry about this anymore.
Yes.
There was one of the questions for the India visa. I got my visa got rejected to India the first time, so I applied again, basically the same way. But one of the questions is, have you ever made a threatening or remark of violence about another person? It was like phrased real funny, like it's not exactly that, but it was like, have you ever done anything that would be a cause to violence? And I was like, ooh, I hope they don't access like Twitter.
Just check
All
your
of them,
watch. Oh,
you
well,
know.
I threatened to impale a bookseller today because he ripped my book in half. So yeah, you
Yeah,
know,
I'm not
just
going to
the
be able.
opening. We haven't even talked about the book yet today. We just talked about
Just things we don't like. Well, one of
things
our
we don't like.
authors, Cassia Boni, who wrote Ganbare and now this book Oroville about this plant, or it's like a utopic community in the south of India. She's banned from going to India, truly, because she
Really?
interviewed Rudy Roy, and Roy is like banned from the government and is like non persona non grata at all, totally, and cannot be spoken about. And because she was involved with her that's her the unofficial reason that it was blocked. They wouldn't say that's specifically it, but that it was pretty clear that that's why is that
No
she
shit.
on that. So,
That's wild.
and we're publishing her book. Like, it's not. And they asked the question that got me like got it rejected the first time was having to explain what I did for my profession. Um,
No, I thought it was because they saw that picture of you wearing the Ben Kingsley as Gandhi shirt, and they thought, and you were wearing like your last visit. There's pictures of you, in India, and you're wearing that shirt, and they're like, "Really? You're gonna have an English actor play Gandhi? Really?
there's
That's
I
what
think
you want to do?"
I
It's
think
a
it's because you brag about your curry recipes
and
too much.
it's a white dude doing brown. You're gonna have a white dude doing brown face as Gandhi, and you're gonna wear the T-shirt for that, and you're gonna give him the Oscar? Really?
There's this. We just did Mining the Delkey Archive podcast that's out today that interviewed Roger Boylan, American Irish writer, and in his book Kill Oil, which is wildly funny and like just about this like made up little Irish town. There's a character in there who becomes obsessed with this like dissident Russian writer who believes that anyone whose last name begins with G or anyone whose name begins with a G is like a magical, like godlike creature. So Gandhi is one of them. Anyone who's like, but he goes through and names all these other like, just random people like that are there at the hotel with him. But it's crazy with the visa thing. It is stupid. I'm not going to complain too much about it. Like I tried again and try to fill it out slightly differently and less like I have any business there. I'm just going to check out food and buy spices, right? But if it's like complicated and weird to do this, anyone coming from any other country that's dealing with any sort of immigration issue in the US or visitation, like, God help you. Like, I can't imagine how much worse it is in so many other circumstances. And the fact that it's probably going to get way more complex and way more like difficult is just like such a bummer. I mean, that's all a bummer.
I mean, I will say I remember years ago now, when the 6-year-old was in daycare, one of his providers, one of the teachers was originally from India, and she was trying to get a visa to just go back and visit her family. And she's a single mom in the United States now. And I think it was something where like I know I'm misremembering, but I know the level of eye rolling about it was something like the person who scanned her daughter's paperwork scanned it in color instead of black and white. And so they just canceled the entire, like it was something administrative where it wasn't even her fault. And like this is someone who, was born and raised there and is trying to go back and see family because it's been 6 years and she doesn't even get.
Yeah.
So it's
So
I can't imagine. I'm
speaking
glad
of travel and difficulties of travel, we're gonna rejoin our crew, Huck and James, as they travel down the Mississippi, um, going going the wrong way. I think is one thing that like I remember from
Uh,
this
story of my life.
story of my life. Because that is, well, anyways, we're going from page 60 through 123, which is chapters 9 through 20. A lot of this, just to do a general big picture recap, is still interlaced with like the Huck Finn novel, but told from James's point of view. So it is there. We're still kind of following, not exactly beat for beat, because there's things that happen off screen again that are in Huck Finn that are not explained fully here, but we're still in that world very closely. I do believe, I might be wrong, but I believe from what I've read in the past and come across that the book is going to veer off from Huck Finn at some point, and I think it happens very soon. Because in this case, we go through the two warring families that have like their blood feud that's been going on for ages, and then we get to the Dauphin and the fake what's the other one, Prince maybe, whatever they are that they pretend
King
to
of
be.
France.
The Duke and the
The
King.
Duke and the King, yeah, the
Yeah.
Duke and the King, the King of France, and that are just pure grifters. They go and like do any sort of revival thing. They pretend to do some Shakespeare and get booted. That seems pretty funny, but they're like one of the last stops in the Adventures of Huck Finn. They're one of the last like set pieces before we get to like where they're rescuing Jim and all the resolution stuff happens. And I think this is where it's going to branch off, which will be good because I like this, but like to be honest, like that sort of like just retelling it from another point of view is good for a while, but I think I'm ready to move on too. I think you're
Yeah.
saying that too, Brian.
Yeah, I haven't read Huckleberry Finn in a minute, and I'm curious, like on the nuance of it, if these episodes is the character Jim off screen for when Huck, right? When Huck is at the with the feuding family, is that where
Yes.
like Jim disappears from the story a little bit,
Yep.
right? Okay,
Hmm.
because I haven't looked exactly at these, but I recall
That's
it
when they
being
get
like that.
separated.
They get
Yeah,
separated,
Yeah.
yeah.
and
Okay.
then when Huck is running away, so the feuding families, what are their names? It's like
It's like Sherwood Borns and the I don't know.
it's something like that. It's something an Essen and something
It
else, but
sounds more made up than fictional.
yeah, it really does.
Yeah, they're dumb last names.
They are very dumb last names.
Apologies if you are listening and have that last name.
But
No, you know you have a dumb last name. It's okay.
the Grangerfords and the Shepherdsons.
Yes.
So the Grangerford and the Shepherdsons have been fighting forever, and in that whole sequence, Huck is staying with one of them, and he realizes that by having to go back and pick up a Bible for the girl, whatever, what was her name, Sophia,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
who's like super cute, and I think she writes poetry and shit in the book. So he goes to get her Bible, and it has something like "Meet me at like 1:30 a.m." in the thing, and it turns out that she's eloping with someone from the warring tribe. They have a big bang bang shoot him out. Huck Finn flees, and then he reconnects with Jim. So like all that stuff is Jim's off screen during that, and Huck Finn and in this case Huck Finn's off screen doing all that, and James, which makes
Yeah.
sense.
I just love that like when they reconnect in James, uh they have like 3 lines of dialogue, and that like this whole huge sequence in Huckleberry Finn is just like 2 lines of dialogue.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it reminds me, like, you ever like we would watch those like made for TV movies or those like cheap movies where the budget was really bad and they're gonna have a battle and it's just somebody, look, the enemy is leaving now. They are. I can see we're gonna win the bat. Like they don't have the money to show a battle scene, so it's just somebody telling you what the battle was.
So I went and saw this movie Green and Gold about the Green Bay Packers and a guy who bets his farm that the Packers will win the Super Bowl. It's a terrible movie through and through. Coach, whatever that guy's name is, Craig T. Nelson from Coach. He's in it. It's not good at all. But what's super funny is it's like billed. It's paid for by Culver's in part, the Midwest Wisconsin based hamburger chain, and they are bill it as a Packers movie, but they didn't pay for like any licensing rights,
They
it
had no
seems.
licensing. Yeah.
So they only have like the only time they show the Packers is someone's watching it on TV, essentially. So it's like on the TV in the room where you're watching it. So it's like the worst. It's sort of like that, or it's like
Yeah.
we just didn't do that. Like
Are you like watching the people who are watching the game?
essentially.
Exactly. And I felt like that's what James was doing for us with these Huck, like Huck, this isn't your story. You're really not that important. So
Yeah.
this whole important episode, like, oh, where were you at? Okay, well, sorry that person got killed. Yeah, but yeah, I think they're dead. Anyways,
Let's
Yeah,
move on.
it moves at a clip. This section moves at a clip. And with
yeah,
you guys
super
saying
fast.
that you are getting a little weary of this bit, it makes me, I mean, does it seem like Everett, that's kind of the point for him to move along at this clip? Because we're like halfway through the book, I guess.
Like 40% because we have three more
Yeah.
episodes. So yeah, that's
So
why I thought like this is about the right place to sort of veer off.
yeah. Like he's wrapping it up as well, maybe.
Yeah.
Do you like the the infused literary aspects that we get in this section with the books and the pencil and like writing and I don't know, like if it's just like a writer thing where we like to like somehow make characters into literature and writing because we're into literature and writing. Sometimes it feels forced. I get why it works in here, but what did you think about like adding that fun wrinkle to James's character?
Gaia?
Which part, you mean getting the pencil or finding the books or starting to write or all of
Yeah,
it?
the books and the pencil, like being super into literature.
Um, I feel that part of it is to maybe be a very obvious nudge to maybe readers who I don't know. I feel like it might be in part an obvious nudge to kind of remind of like this is what we want to be doing or seeing. Like this is the point of the book is
Mhm.
to give Jim's character that literary edge, but also I do I mean I kind of like it. It kind of gives him more of the personality and I do like the sort of preciousness of like Huck saying like, "What do you want with those books?" and Jim saying, "I don't know. It just feels good to hold it. Like it feels really nice to be holding something that you are invested in and something that you care about, which is in his case reading." So it's a little precious, but I'm okay with it. I'll allow it.
I have two
Yeah.
things. Two things about that. One is that I do like books that are writers trying to write a book. Like that's a very heavy trope within a lot of Dalkey
Yeah.
titles, and like the Nouveau Roman's sort of in that vein too, if you squint. But like I do like that, so I don't mind that element, and it's not really doing that here. But I do agree, Kai, that it's like giving it allows for like him to have a voice, and they say like write what you see and what's happening, so it allows for that kind of counter narrative. Which you should come back to that word later. But I also think that this part is key on 73, where he's talking to himself and he's like, well, Huck's asleep. Or I don't know if he's asleep, but I want to wake him up because I don't want him to catch me reading. And he's like, at that, how could he even know? At that moment, the power of reading made itself clear and real to me. If I could see the words, then no one could control them or what I got from them. They couldn't even know if I was merely seeing them or reading them, sounding them out or comprehending them. It was a completely private affair and completely free and therefore completely subversive. And I think
Yeah.
that's like a key to it is that in that instance, like is that's less of the writing part what you're saying, Brian, but like of the like the literary word part is like that's the only space he has where nobody knows what he knows. And that you're free from like the white man abuse and also from like anything related to that. Like he can, be reading whatever it is. And with Huck Finn, it's kind of interesting because Huck can't read really. I mean, and he does like within the book. He's like in school, but he's not like in aware of any of these books or like into any of these books versus James, who is like, yeah, here's like my space.
Yeah. And that's I highlighted that part as well. And I think that's a perfect example of what I was saying of it is a precious moment in that writing. It's, it's very simple, but at the same time, I think as people, and speaking for the three of us, as people who are very steeped in book culture and literature and reading, I think there's also that part that we can identify with, of like getting lost in a book, or it is a private, like appreciating the simplicity yet depth of that statement.
Yeah, I feel like there's a really interesting like it's kind of trying to marry that like two camps of telling a good story and being more literary, where it can be commercially understood, but also, you know, talked about at length. And like obviously, like in like a book club of readers, you can talk about what's being signaled with the books that he's choosing to read and wanting to have a pencil so he can tell his own story, right? Like I could just see people just with like their NPR voice sipping tea, just gobbling that up, wanting to wanting to talk about that, right? It's like catnip for a book club. But then he can still like be funny and, as we're saying, like subversive. So I think it's an interesting, neat thing to inject. What do you think is the reasoning behind like I don't know, we'll just with like Voltaire, for instance. That's who that section there, right? In the country of
Voltaire comes
Yeah.
Westphalia.
up at once, and then John Locke is the other.
Voltaire and
John Locke,
Roux.
He passes on the Bible. Shots fired at the Bible. Okay. And once like that's a whole not like maybe like episode 3 we can talk about religion with this because there's a lot of interesting things discussed with religion, obviously.
Yeah.
And Rousseau as well was another one.
Rousseau, yeah, Rousseau as
Yeah.
well.
So is social contract. These are all like people that are
And
talking about the
Kierkegaard.
the best possible world and how society can function, right? It's
Well,
like
Yeah.
but that's because they're transitioning out of right, like
like
out of
in
the Middle Ages, like you start transitioning out of divine law and looking more for like human rights
Hmm.
and so I think it would make sense for a slave to be like, how about no to religion? I've seen what we have done in the name of religion, and let's go with positive law, human rights, and something that's maybe a little more anthropocentric, right? Like you see those kind of elements starting to shape up a little bit later for the United States, obviously, but I wonder if that's kind of what he's speaking to with the rejection of the Bible, the embracing of the French philosophers and John Locke, obviously.
yeah, I was well, two things. Rousseau is maybe my least familiar. I was looking back to make sure I had this right, but yeah, Candide for Voltaire is an attack on the idea that because God created the world is there for the best possible world. That's not true, and that is like the state of things for like from the slave perspective. And at that point in time, is that the people in charge are like, this is the world God created. This is the natural order of things. It's like the very fascist situation, clearly like the slave owning world where it's like this is how it's supposed to be, so this is how it's always going to be. And Voltaire like saying no to that in a different context, but 100 years earlier, and saying that's not true. and like arguing against that and satirizing it. I think that's clutch. And then with Locke is obviously the like the tabula rasa, that you're not born with like a certain innate ability or disability to do things. Everything's learned to a certain degree, and that the impact of the environment is so huge on like is bigger than people had discussed before that, and that the context that you're brought up in, the experiences you have, will truly mold you. You start as a blank slate and can like go from there. And then Rousseau's like idea that you need to do things for each other and keep the social world together. These are all like fundamentally like upending types of philosophies in a world like 18, what is it, 1830s, 1840s, America
Yeah.
Yeah. And
and
I
today.
did pull up all of these just for the AI summaries on Google.
I hope they're wrong.
No, you're mostly right. So the treatise on toleration, Voltaire asserts that government should remain neutral towards all religions, advocating for a secular state that protects individual freedoms. And I think it's interesting that Everett goes with all for the best instead of Candide, which is maybe, I don't know, is that how it was published originally in English? But the main point of Candide is that people should find happiness in themselves and cultivate their gardens. And yeah, and Rousseau's discourse on inequality is, or at least part one, is a careful reconstruction of natural man. So yeah, it's and those I don't know if it's to Brian's point, but what you were asking earlier about these things that are set up for us. I mean, I with the exception of the title of the Treatise of Toleration and Rousseau's Discourse of Inequality, which are pretty straightforward. I didn't have to even necessarily look up the content of the books to recognize it that with like sorry to recognize the kind of irony of including those as the books that he had found that he had been looking at the judge's bookshelf for such a long time, and now he just has them
Well,
available
it's
to.
like, yeah, because even just by the selection of literature that he wants to accept and reject, it's basically saying, I don't want salvation, I want rights,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right?
And treatment as a human. Those are
And I
like
don't
very
want
humanist
divinity, I
philosophers.
want humanity.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. God's not going to save you now.
No, and there are a bunch of times in this section where Hawk starts to speak more in a more, to us logical sense. And even on page 72, he says, well, don't every man got a right to be free? And Jim says, ain't no such thing as rights. And
Yeah.
Huck's like, what? And Jim's like, nothing. Like it almost sounds like bitterness, but it does. They both seem much more self-aware and or outward. Huck cannot talk. Huck seems very, very aware.
And like, I don't know, I feel like Everett just kind of keeps hitting things on the nose. I mean, if you're a close reader, you kind of like groan just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still good lines, right? Like just beneath that, he looked at the sack. Don't know what you want with them heavy books, but sure, I suppose if some real treasure come along, we can just drop them.
Yeah.
It's like, no, don't you see that those are his treasure? He would never drop the, like
Hmm.
it's a
Yeah.
good line and or it's a good image and I like the weight that it has and what it represents, but like it's just like so on everything's so like hit you
One
over
of,
the head like don't miss it.
one of the
Yeah.
things that's really good though is that chapter 16 where he starts writing, and I mean he gets the pencil is stolen by young, what's his name?
Young,
George.
young
George.
George.
Young George steals the pencil.
Oh, that part where he gets tore up and whispers run to him for giving
Yeah.
Yeah.
him the
Oh.
pencil.
Okay,
Uh,
so that's
Like,
that's tough. And
because like
like,
yeah.
everything is so pregnant with meaning in
mhm.
all of these scenes and like trying to like what is that like on whose back are you doing something today? And you need to like look back at that and say thank you, or like what do you have today that somebody gave to you that you probably did nothing necessarily to earn.
Yeah.
And like that physicalness of George doing that for him, what happens to George when it doesn't benefit George in any way
Yeah.
except that James can maybe do something. Oh my God,
And then what
that's
he writes
brutal.
at the beginning of chapter 16 is like, my name is James. I wish I could tell my story with a sense of history as much as industry. I was sold when I was born and then sold again, so on and so forth. Um, I wanted to make sure, and I did, that that is not the beginning of our book, which I was really relieved by. Like, I think that would have made it too cute by
Oh
half,
dear.
as if
Yeah.
it had looped back around. But either like these are different things, or like James writing this book is those little bastards are hiding out there in the tall grass is such a better opening line than my name is James. However, my name is James is not that far from like call me Ishmael, and we do have the
Yeah.
Ahab reference in this
Yep.
section as well. So
Yeah.
Yep.
a lot of things sort of tying together there.
But see, I another thing I do like, and this is where I guess what I'm trying to say is I with this being my first personal ever book that I'm reading, I feel like there are layers of games. There's like the layer, a more superficial literary layer, let's call it, for like easy reading, and like we're saying the precious moments or the nails hit on the head that are very obvious. And then the things that are maybe a few levels deeper, like where he's saying like, I admire those who at 5 years of age, like Venture Smith, can remember the clans of their ancestors. But a few pages later, he was reading the book or the pamphlet by which self-related by Venture Smith, and he's basically like, what 5-year-old remembers that shit? Like, what 5-year-old, like this is not realistic. And I kind of love those little nods too, of those kind of like the internally internal awareness of Jim just being like, that's not possible.
It's a really dumb question, I think. And this is just like, I mean, I thought about it kind of before and just sort of like wrote it off, and now I'm like a little bit more curious what you guys have to say. So on page like 85, when they're talking to the other, it is the other black people that they meet, the other slaves that they meet, and they say, "So you're in Illinois? So am I in a free state?" And the men laughed. "Boy, you're in America," a muscular man said. The old man put down one of my books. "We're in Illinois, true enough, and Illinois is supposedly a free state, true enough. But the white folks around here tell us we're in Tennessee." "Maybe they believe it," I said. "What are we going to do?" the big man asked. "Take a map to the courts and say, 'Look here, we're actually free?'" And it occurs to me that like they start in Hannibal, Missouri, which I just double checked is right across from Illinois. Like they're talking like throughout this book of like, oh, we're gonna go, get you to like the Ohio River and get you to the Free States. But the Free State is literally right there. And they're not going north, they're going south because
Hmm.
the way the river flows, and they're heading towards New Orleans, which is where the whole thing was that she was going to sell him to New Orleans, and that's why he runs away. But he's running in the direction they want to go. But I also don't know what things were at that time in terms of like how did like this is really ignorant to say, but like if you just got to Illinois, were you freed at that point in time? Where are they going if they're trying to get somewhere to free him? Where are they actually going? Because they're obviously going the wrong way, but like, isn't there a solution right there?
I mean,
I don't know.
they must be at that southernmost tip area that is Kentucky.
No, I don't know that they are.
But if your property
Yeah,
are you free? Because sure, go to a free state and someone grabs you and is gonna like return the property to the person for a reward, or like
right.
you're not worth anything to me free,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like this community, the way these people are. Like
Yeah.
there is no safety. There is no it's
No.
like you said, I mean, it's like it doesn't matter. They'll just say you're somewhere else. You don't
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
like it's
that's
sort
what
of
the men
it's
are
like
saying.
yeah, and I don't mean to like mock it anyway. It's like, yeah, that's the world is like it's all rigged to continue to keep it
Yep.
in this vein and to reinforce that particular thing. But like it's on such a weird fundamental level to me of like it's true, like you just wouldn't know really geography, I don't think, if you're Huck or James or anyone else of a certain like class or level. Like you just wouldn't know. And looking at it, like I had to go through my mental map for so long of like where's Hannibal and like because Illinois is alongside Missouri for like almost the whole. They end at the same point in the South, and then we're into Tennessee and whatnot. But like, how is this working in their world? And just like who has the maps? Who controls the maps?
What's the itinerary?
Do we know where we are going?
Now you're getting to like we're going a little later into Derrida and
Mm-hmm. That's true. Is it a map or is it the territory?
I guess
But
that's the point that it just doesn't matter.
it just doesn't matter. And in
it's
Huck
that
Finn,
line,
this
boy, you're in America.
yeah, you're in America. You're
Pick a
screwed. Don't
state.
worry,
You are still a
You're,
black
yeah,
man.
you're a black man in
You
America.
like you're in America. That's the map.
man. And some of
So
it, like
have fun wandering through it. Good luck.
Within Huck Finn, this is much more like of a farce sort of situation where like there's so many things that Huck Finn repeats or that Tom Sawyer repeats to him that are just like so utterly wrong. Like those be like, here's the history of whatever it is, and they'll like pontificate, and you're like, dude, that is so like from our perspective, like just a lot of things are muddled together. You're completely wrong about like what that is. And so when he's like, oh, we're sailing up to like Ohio, you're like, that doesn't make any sense, and that's like fine. Like it's all kind of a joke. But then when you put it into this context, all of a sudden it's like, oh fuck, like that's a way darker
I
scene.
think like every little boy has a little bit of Huck Finn in them, and like I remember there's this one kid that just got his driver's license, and we had convinced him that if you use your turn signals, it uses more gas, and so don't. That's why people don't use them because they're getting better gas mileage.
Oh my
And he was
God.
just driving around at night,
Poor
like
kid.
swerving everywhere with no.
Jesus.
And I was like, well, I mean, if you can do no lights, it's even better because like that uses a ton of gas because
Yeah,
those are on
God.
all the time.
100%.
Are you guys trying to get him killed?
I mean, we
Wait,
convince someone that if
just
a stop sign had a
16-year-olds
white
being
line around it, it
stupid.
was optional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that I want to use that
Oh,
to go.
terrible people.
I want to use that catering or pandering to the humors and adventurous inclinations of youth to again point out that there is a continual callback to the father figure aspect of Jim. I mean, I want to ask you guys a question. Huck asks something about he basically comes down to him saying that his dad hates Jim more than he hates the other slaves, and I don't understand that unless it has to do with the fact that Jim was a friend to Huck and he knew that. That's something that I don't remember from if it comes up in Huck Finn, but um when the raft gets separated the first time for a little bit and then Jim can see that Huck is scared and so he pretends to lie down and pretends to be asleep because he wants to feed, like he does say he's like, oh, these boys and their these white people like to feel how they feel, but at the same time he sees Huck for the scared child that he is and is trying to placate him by setting himself up for this prank that he knows is going to be stupid, but it will bring joy to this child who he's effectively babysitting.
No, I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
Um, that hatred could probably becoming that a slave has a better relationship with my son than I do.
And part of the and Huck Finn that I remember from just listening to it or like took away was that his dad also hates him because he is like educated. He's doing things that are like proper, and his dad hates that. Like the fact that he knows that he has the $6,000 or whatever it is, and just wants to take that and get blast ass drunk all the time and not do any of this. And he gets really resentful of like his learning and his
Of
like
Jim or Huck?
of Huck. Huck's
Okay.
dad hates Huck for that reason.
Yeah.
He really doesn't like it. Um,
But
and
Huck says that his dad hates Jim.
yeah, and I don't remember how if that comes in
Okay.
Huck Finn itself, honestly.
Okay.
But I just found what I was looking for that I had totally forgotten. Just to not to go back to your point for in a second, Kaya, but
No, it's fine.
like the Illinois thing. It's on page 65. One night our fire burning, Huck asked, "Why don't you just make me take you across that river? In Illinois, you'd be a free man." I had thought of it, but somehow it just seemed like I'd be that much farther from family. Slavery didn't recognize imaginary borders. I needed money. I thinked on it, Huck, but you and me be friends. I can't just leave you. And I meant that. Huck was just a boy. Huck nodded. Do you know where we're going? Boy asked. Ain't got no idea, but we's on our way. So part of that like relates to what you're saying in terms of like his kind of like father figuring Huck to a great degree and being like, well, you're my, I'm with you here. We're kind of taking care of each other. And he does like look out for him in certain ways, but also that sort of explains the like, okay, we know that that's possible, but like, here's like a reason why. And then that gets reinforced within the plot where he's like, I need money because I could buy my family out of slavery and then we could have a family. And that's like his bigger point than like him getting free is to be able to like get into the position to free his family.
Yes.
Which when you're talking about religious stuff, Brian, that seems kind of religious and also kind of Buddhist. Like that idea that you don't go to the promised land, you don't go to nirvana until you bring everyone that you can bring to nirvana to nirvana. They should let me into India for that one.
Nice.
And this is my son, this is my business card.
Uh,
Yeah, but yeah, I do the relationship between Huck and Jim in Huck Finn is already a little bit like complicated. Like I think we talked last time about how it's important for like Huck Finn to be dead because that offers you a chance to like look at the world in certain ways. And
mhm.
it's under that kind of guise that he does see he tends to even though the he uses the N-word a lot and like is sort of like weird about it a little bit in Huck Finn, and we can talk about that in a second here. But he also like just seems to start to recognize that things aren't quite right. The fact that he and Tom want to save Jim, and you know, like Jim's my friend. Like there's like a genuine feeling there that sort of develops out of seeing everything that's around them. And here, when he uses the N word for the first time, and I can find the quote in a second, the exact quote, but it's something like where James says like we were both pretty uncomfortable about that, or like
Yep.
everyone like kind of like takes a pause and is like, yeah,
Bottom of page 69.
okay.
Because that I yep. Lots of awkward pauses and knowing looks shared between them later on as well.
Yeah, so I somehow that word seems strange coming out of Huck's mouth. I think he heard it too because we shared an awkward silence.
Hmm.
And that's I think that's important within
Yes.
this as well, like as a really like in terms of characterizing and like putting Huck away from putting him separate from the racism of the time and putting him into more of what you're talking about, Brian, of the kid who lies to their friends to get them to drive around without lights on. The
Yeah.
the general commentary of like how good Huck is at lying is awesome too. Like everyone at this point is a grifter, as we know. They're surrounded by these people, but there's like when they get on the raft when they're escaping,
Well,
and
he uses it for, for their good,
yeah,
right? He gets $10 and prevents those guys from finding out that
yeah,
James is on the raft by, saying he has like leprosy or something, right?
I love
Oh,
that. I forgot that.
smallpox. Yeah.
Smallpox and
So
immediately
like
the men are
like
like, ew.
oh, nice going. Like, way
Yeah.
to go.
like
So,
I don't
quick on
fuck
your
with the
feet,
pox.
dude.
COVID.
Oh, God, sorry.
It's like modern day COVID. It's COVID for the 1800s.
Have you
Oh
Yeah.
God, stay away from me.
Have you seen that photo? It's resurfaced because of RFK Jr., obviously, but there's a photo that they used in like textbooks for a long time, medical textbooks, of a kid with smallpox sitting next to a kid who was vaccinated and has nothing on his skin, and the kid with smallpox, they're like naked from the waist up, is just like covered with like pox, and they're like holding on to each other, and it was like used as visual evidence of like how vaccines can prevent smallpox. But I don't think I'd ever really looked at a smallpox person before. If it's intense. And again, vaccines are good. I just want to reiterate one more time, just for anyone who has not heard good things about vaccines.
2 month review is pro mom, pro sex worker, pro vaccine.
Yes.
But I want to actually provide an ulterior. I think we should get to have. Can I take you to the museum where we have cavemen riding dinosaurs? Because they were not vaccinated and they could tame dinosaurs no problem
Could tame dinosaurs, no problem.
until Noah's flood. They couldn't fit them on the ark, obviously. So I don't know. There are some other views, but
There.
I'm just saying.
Your free speech is being impeded by
Yes.
my vaccine talk.
Oh my God.
There's
Yeah.
also this interesting, like, there's certain names that just like pop out when they're talking about the genie and the wishes, and you're like, I could wish you to
Mhm.
be free. Um, the question I played with, but certainly couldn't share with Huck, was what would Kierkegaard wish for?
Yeah,
I
that's
Like,
love
right?
that.
awesome.
Like he's like talking with his
Fucking
kid. He's
love
like,
that.
I've got fear and trembling and the, existentialism and all that. I'd like to have these discussions with you, Huck. He's like, I sure wish I could have many wishes.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
ah, this stupid kid. All right.
Like
Yeah,
I feel
sounds
like
like a good story, Huck.
that's the
That-
shirt. WWKD. What would Kierkegaard do?
That is great. I mean, it
He's
is.
curious about Soren Kierkegaard, and Huck's. I wish for a tree that could grow diamonds.
All those
Cool.
those gaps I really like, and I do think that that's. I mean, it's a really compelling part of the book. I think for a lot of like what we're describing as like as you're describing as like NPR readers, where it's like, look, he's not like this. Like, there's a distance from what the assumption is or the stereotype is, and who the character is, and that's eye-opening in these certain ways, and we should think about things that way. That's all fine and good and like social. I do think as like from a writerly point of view or from a craft point of view, all these gaps that you create are so vital to making the story work. Otherwise, it's just trite. And like the kind of distances of like his interior thought from the exterior makes that work. If he were like just if this were just telling the story from Jim's point of view without Jim becoming James and having this kind of semi-intellectual background and interest in these things and whatnot and being a writer, like I don't think it works. I think you need that space there
Yeah.
for it to like move along and to be more than just like a new telling of the same story, which I know we've just I mean talked about how it's kind of like paralleling that, but I think it will change. But even so, like just within these sections, like there is a more social commentary and satire and like and pointedness to it simply because there is that difference between the Jim of Huck Finn and the James and what James knows and can think internally and how he can think internally in James.
Yeah.
Brian, you look
Yeah, I think
concerned.
it differentiates itself from the satire of Huckleberry Finn, where it gives like just a little like it somehow grounds it, but also gives it like a little bit of magic to it. Like it almost feels like magical realism, where you could have these people that show up with powers and abilities that shouldn't be there, but are there, and you just like roll with it. Like okay,
Mhm.
like James knowing about Kierkegaard and like nobody in the United States like right like and, like okay or like just goes to the
Does fear and
judge and like
trembling come
and
out?
just like takes like all of like like French philosophers and like yeah I got all this no big deal like yeah cool like I like that and it gives it like a little it it takes heavy topics, lightens it up just a little bit, and has some fun with it. Um, but also just like presents it in a way like, yeah, that's the way it is. And like moving on, like just like no, we're not lingering here, we're not staying here, we're moving on. Whoops. I let my guard down a little bit. I better go back to my song and dance that people like want to see. And like there's
Yeah.
these little moments where there's like slips, and you notice they're getting like a little bit more frequent now. He's picking up the
Hmm.
pace on like dropping the facade. And so I think that's helpful to like we were saying, not make it so precious and trite. Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
question for you. What year is this book taking place? Just roughly.
Um, I can tell you it should be after 1761, which is the year that Faber-Castell was
There you
found.
go. Well, Kierkegaard's like 1850-ish.
1841 is the first book. Either or is 1843, but like that gets you too close to the Civil War, doesn't it? Like this book is
We're
around
right
that
on
time.
that's what those Grandersons and the whatevers, and I think we're on the cusp of it. Like, I don't know,
Right. So
when does Huck
I don't
Finn?
think Kierkegaard's in English at this point in time.
Well, he probably read it in the
In Danish?
original
In
in
the
the
original
Danish.
Danish,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Very
Maybe that's
widely
why he's
accessible book.
wondering.
He's got a
Maybe that's
first
why he's
edition.
He's,
that's why he's wondering what Kierkegaard would wish for.
I
Kierkegaard
mean,
would wish for a fucking translator, is what he would wish for.
I mean, he does crank from between like 1841 and 1850 is all of his writing basically. So like there's like it's like kind of insane like how many of these things are right there. But like he wouldn't there's no way.
Yeah, because it says it was set
Real
in 1830s,
There's
1840s, so it's kind of
yeah.
impossible. And that's why
No.
I was like, we're just gonna go with this. Is there something magical about it? It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. I'm like, all right, let's just roll with it.
I mean, I accidentally read a little bit ahead when I was biking at the gym yesterday, so I don't know if this scene's in this week or next week, but John Locke does come out of the water at one
that was
point in
this
time.
week, yeah.
That was this week, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, Voltaire's in his dreams, his fever dreams. He's like those people are there speaking like the wise, like the wise grandmothers from magical realism from Latin America. So it
Yeah.
totally tracks. But it is funny. I just thought like that. Yeah,
That
okay,
doesn't track. The
doesn't
other
work.
thing too, which gives it that kind of sense of magic to it, is like I don't know, like the metafictional aspects where they're talking about irony, and then like this whole thing is like dramatic irony, right? Like
Hmm.
everything's
Hmm.
set up, payoff, like, hey, check this out. And then later it like, okay, there it is again. Like we keep seeing that like happen over and over again as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Very true. I don't know. I think it's still very fun. I think it's
yeah,
a fun book. I can see you see the it's this is like a book that you can make this argument about so many different books, but this is a book that as you read it, you're like, I know why this is popular. Like this is exactly going to be popular. Like 100%. This will win awards. This will be a very well selling, very like beloved book. 1,000%. Now going like forward, being like, how could I write something like that? Nearly impossible to see the way to that pathway. But like looking from its end backwards, it's like, oh, this has all these things that will clearly makes it work. And there's that magic of like the writer, imbuing it and being able to like pull that off and put it together. But
yeah.
it does like it just checks every box and does it in like a professional, clean way that doesn't muddy the waters, that keeps everything like tidy in a sense that it's like, yeah, clearly this is a great book for the time in terms of both sales and criticism and recognition. It just is right there. Um, and that's kind of rare. I think with a lot of the books we've done on this podcast, anyways, they're like books that we
Out in
revere
the
or that
weeds.
yeah, they're like yeah, but they're also yeah, they're wild. They're like not quite they like pull it off by being so ambitious or like taking this big swing. And this is like needle fine, this is
Well, you
what
know how
we
like
need to
in
do.
movies, the producers they have like this matrix, and you have to check certain parts. Like, does it have a love story? Yes. Does it have an action-packed third act?
Who's the big
Yes.
bad? When are they
Does yeah.
introduced?
Can we quote hit the urban market? Ooh, if we can hit all four of these, we're gonna have like they have like this
Hmm.
like checklist, and like sometimes we can get four or five. Like Titanic really hit all of them. Oh my God. And like you get, a bajillion-dollar movie or something. I feel like this is like you're saying for like like for a literary book, like it's a darling that'll hit like so many of those boxes. Um, where when we move on to Empire of the Senses, everyone's gonna hate it, and I really hope so.
Everyone's gonna hate the shit out of that book. I know.
It is gonna be a
Ooh,
hard left
I've had to talk about it
from
so much
James.
weirdly, and like about her generally in the past week for like an interview and for some other stuff that like I like. Yeah, Ben, people are gonna lose their minds.
So yeah, this season we're gonna do N-word and C-word, a whole bunch, which
Yeah,
is
that's true.
how can we get demonetized as quickly as possible? I got an idea.
We were monetized. Let's go in the red.
I got an idea.
It's interesting because they both are subversive books, but doing subversion in two different ways.
That's why we set it up like this.
Yep.
I think it'll be a really cool way to do it.
Do you guys
I don't know. Feminism was so 1990 though. That's kind of done now, right?
I mean, women already got all they needed. It's fine.
Everything's perfect in America with
There's
that.
yeah,
nothing wrong here.
Everything's
yeah,
good.
Greatest
we're
country in the world.
we're not being fired, we're quitting.
Yeah.
No,
We're
I
not being
want to ask
confined to the home. We're just making TikToks.
making TikToks. Hashtag tradwife. Do you guys think there's any amount of authorial nefariousness in how either how this book is being presented to to white readers or in ways that we are consuming it? Like, are we being in are we being manipulated
I was
in the way that Jim is using language to manipulate to like not manipulate, but are we being code switched?
I I was taking your question maybe in a slightly different direction. Is like, who is the audience for this book? Is it
Yeah.
like educated black readers, or is it just like general readers? Sure, but like white readers specifically? Is this geared towards that market a little bit?
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is as a white reader, am I reading this book in a way that Percival Everett has specifically intended in the same way that his iteration of Jim specifically speaks in ways that is meant for white people to hear?
Brian, I want to hear what you have to say to this with the sort of add-on of like the erasure side of things. Like you have these expectations of what a black book is going to be or a book by a
Yeah,
black author is going to
yeah,
be.
yeah.
And like if it doesn't fit that, it doesn't fit. Is this fitting that code?
I don't. My guess would be that the author doesn't give a shit
Yeah, I
uh,
agree.
who
Yeah.
reads it or why they read it. I think
Hmm.
he just wants to write the book he wants to write, and you can do what you want with it. If you love it, cool. If you hate it, thanks for reading it. Whatever. And it's probably on to the next one, would be my
Okay.
guess.
Yeah.
Um, and I, and my guess would also probably be like, I had some things I was doing, but whatever you take from it, that's what's most important. I'm
Hmm.
not going to tell you like, it's I don't know, almost everything I've ever written, I had maybe an idea in mind, and it's usually not what readers get from it or what they find interesting about it. And I'm not I've never tell them like, well, actually, this one's about this, and I really
Hmm.
want you to get that out of it. I'm usually more like delighted, like, oh wow, that's really cool that you got that, or
Yeah.
Although
And
maybe going back to what you're saying about like checking the four quadrants and the boxes and the markets, like on one side, this is a book that is telling people like black readers of Huckleberry Finn how to relate to Huckleberry Finn and like what giving it like a new like a read on it and a take and like a perception. And at the same time, it's not that it's telling white people, look, this book was racist, but it's also like giving them an insight into the book in a different way. So it kind of hits both audiences of that painting with a broad brush, like slightly differently, and but appeals like in a smart way to both of them.
yeah.
yeah, because like I could see like the parts that my wife has read, like she really connects with it, with like um working with a bunch of like powerful white men and like how difficult it is to navigate that, how they see her, what they expect of her, the face she has to put on, the signaled communication she has to have to be heard or to get something done. Um, and it's like, so there could be a reader that can go through this whole thing and like connect with it simply just based off of that, right?
Yeah.
There could be a reader like me that might be like, I really like Huckleberry Finn as American literature, and I can look at this and like this is what American literature is today. Also, this is really cool. I like this. There was nothing like this uh, in the canon. Um, I love that it's taking something that is a touchstone for American literature, and it's um, doing something new and interesting with it that's for our time. Cool. Like you can read it that way if you want.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, to be clear, if in the event that any author is doing, and specifically in this case, Percival Everett is doing any sort of authorial nefariousness and playing me as a reader, I'm here for it. I want to make clear I accept
I
it.
just want to get played.
I just want to get, if I'm getting played, that's fine. I was just curious if anybody else felt that way. I don't, which I don't necessarily feel. I'm looking for, I'm maybe looking for more than there is, but that's to what you're saying, Brian. I'm reading it then in the way that I want to read it, and which, yes, I want to get played.
You're
You're
still
muted.
muted.
You're muted.
And that's also a fair assessment for you as well, because there everything is doubled and it's secret signals and yeah, so far. So why not?
Yeah, absolutely. This sort of came up with this interview that
Grift me, baby.
look, it's going to come out in Publishers Weekly about Attila by Alyosha Cole that I did the other day, and he was asking about like I don't know how we got on this topic, but it was essentially like, how do you read a book that's like, written for essentially no one except for the author themselves, and it's like uber like experimental to the point of like sense and logic and everything's kind of missing. And I was saying like how refreshing it can be to not feel manipulated. That there are the books that like that you can feel. I don't think that this one to me feels like it's totally manipulating you, but I always feel like Wes Anderson movies are like very prime examples of like how to emotionally manipulate an audience, and that's something that people generally, tend to like is I want to go through the highs and the lows and feel those emotions and have that like put on me. And you can, as a craft, as a writer or as a director or whatever, work with that scheme and get people into those places. And then there's something like Attila by L.H. Cole. And I was saying like maybe Empire of the Senseless that is doing that such a different vibe where it's just like this is the shit that's here. I'm not manipulating you. Like you're gonna have to work to uncover like what you're going to get out of it, but it stands apart from like any sort of like attempt to influence the readership of it aside from
Mhm.
just like putting things on the page. Although that's also like a bullshit argument because like if you put things in any order, you're automatically like making a decision that influences how it's being perceived. But I don't know. Yeah, I know what you mean. Or it's following what you guys are saying.
Mhm.
I think I'm making no sense today, so we probably should wrap this one up. Anyone got a favorite line? I had one, but now I have to find it.
Before we do that, I have one more question. So, um, on page 94 at the bottom, it's right before Jim parts ways with the four men who he's been sort of meeting up with now and then over this period of time, or who come to kind of sit with him. And they're talking, and at the end, Pierre's the one who says, "You just have to go north and find a life. God will take care of your family." And they all look at Pierre and he flashes a smile. And then old George says, "Damn, I thought you'd turned." What what is I know it's not super important, but I know there's a joke being played, but or being like someone made a joke or Pierre made a joke. Are they saying like I thought you'd turned to Christianity or
That's how I took it, is that it was like, oh,
okay.
I thought you turned religious, because then he's like, believing would be nice, but we all just be slaves.
Right.
Like
Okay.
that goes back to that, like what you're talking about with Voltaire and whatnot, of like God's not making the perfect world. Like you can't just believe in that.
Okay.
That was my interpretation, but again, I think I'm talking nonsense today. I got too trapped in the new episode of Paradise last night. Now I'm just gonna speak like those people. Where you say whatever you say, you're gonna repeat that 4 or 5 times in different situations so that nobody's lost at any moment and every single motif is beaten into the ground. Brilliant.
Got to look at the words written in the sky.
Gotta look at the words and the yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Like, oh yeah, that they brought up Die Hard a bunch of times so far. That's weird. Insider reference for everyone watching Paradise, which is me.
I think one of these days I'm gonna finally watch Die Hard, and then like the last 39 years of my life will just click into place. Because every single reference at every book or TV show that I've ever watched that has referenced it, it all makes sense now.
Facts.
Yeah,
Anyone got a line?
I do. I'll do it because I was just talking. Bottom of page 83. I do love the Kierkegaard one, but bottom of page 83, Jim is saying, "Drowning to death always made a person more interesting, but I wanted at that moment to remain as boring as possible."
I'm gonna go the most American line here. It's on page 121. But he said quite clearly that he's a Jew. No, that's what Shakespeare said, the king said. Shakespeare was a Jew? No, Shylock was a Jew. Who the hell is Shylock? The preacher asked.
I thought that was really
He's the
funny.
fellow what says the speech in the play. The king said, "Were you really a pirate?"
It's so great because it's like layers of play upon play
It's like,
upon
oh
play
my
upon play.
God. It's so
Like
Which is very Shakespearean.
it's so good.
so many levels back. I found the one. I knew that I had it say here somewhere. I took a picture of it. That's why I couldn't find it because it's not marked in the book. But it just says it's from 111. It turned out that con men are the easiest people to con.
All right.
Yes.
Got to stick with that. So next week, I did not look. We go up to around page 180 something. So I'm going to guess. Oh, I know exactly where we go. We go up to page 185, which is the end of part one. So that's for next week. We'll be back. And if you are listening to this, rate and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Cast, wherever you get your podcasts from. It's great help. Also, be sure you're on the right feed, and tell your friends to follow that feed. Apple has totally screwed us in terms of like converting and moving our podcast over. So both this and the 3% podcast have new things on Apple that you have to subscribe to. But if you're hearing this, you apparently already subscribed. So there you go. You're doing well. Also, you can find us on YouTube where you can do that. I don't know what you do. Subscribe, follow, listen,
Smash the like button.
mash the like button. Is it thumbs up in there? I don't even know. But like is the likes just the thumbs up?
I don't know, just smash all the buttons.
Okay.
Except for the report for content one.
Yeah,
Don't
don't
smash
report for
that one.
content.
Just swipe right.
Yeah, thumbs down is don't like, according to Alex. And we'll be back next week with more talk of James, of Everett, of all the fun stuff.